Good morning, members of the Committee of Tourism, Economic Affairs, Transport and Telecommunication, support staff, radio listeners, TV viewers, those following via social media, and members of the media. Welcome to this committee meeting number 3 of today, Tuesday, May 24, 2022. I would like to give a special welcome to Mr. Luis Angel. We have established a quorum of 4 factions. Please stand for a moment of silence. Thank you. I have received notice of absence from the following committee members: MP Grisha Heiliger Martin, MP William Marlin, MP Melissa Gums, MP Bryson. Are there any other notifications? Looking in the chat, I see MP Emmanuel and MP Rayon Peterson also have sent their notice of absence. Are there any other notification? MP George, you have the floor.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning to my colleagues, Parliament, of course, Mr. Griffier, and also our guest, Mr. Engel. Mr. Chairman, I want to take this time out to congratulate the Youth Brigade who, I believe it was on Friday, celebrated their 9th anniversary also, and also had promotions among their colleagues. I believe that that organization is a very important one. It also shows that we can use these organizations in order to discipline our youth and to make them good citizens of St. Martin. So I just want to congratulate Ms. Peterson, the founder, and all those who took part, and of course the Ministries of Education and Justice. On a more sad note, Mr. Chairman, I want to extend my deepest sympathy and, sympathy and condolences on behalf of myself and, of course, National Alliance faction. The passing of Ms. Nora Snake on the island of Statia. She was a very strong person that really represented her people well. And I believe that people of Statia has really lost a great stalwart. So again, my deepest sympathy to herself and family, to her family, of course, and coming from myself and also the members of the National Alliance. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP George. The agenda point for this committee meeting is presentation on project concepts that can create significant revenue for the country, booked under IS 720/2021-22, dated March 30th, 2022. We go over to the agenda point. On March 30th, 2022, Parliament received a letter from Mr. Lewis with the request for a meeting with members of Parliament to discuss the aforementioned agenda point. This document is registered as incoming document IS/720/2122, dated March 30th of 2022, and can be found on the P drive of Parliament. Hence today, this meeting. At this time, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Luis Engel for some introductory remarks and a presentation. Mr. Lewis, you have the floor.
Chairman, I thank you. Members of the Parliament, also the Committee of CTEATT, I thank you. Is my voice heard? Yes? You want me to sit? Okay, perfect. Again, thank you for the opportunity. It's been in the making. It's been a while since I've been preparing these projects. I think I put everything together to provide you with as much information as possible. Meeting requests have also been sent to government to make the same presentation, and I'm hopeful to very soon be able to do that as well. If I may jump forward right away into our presentation, because they're kind of long. Swaliga Fetus Floating Farm, a way forward to self-reliance through sustainable farming. What does this mean? Floating farms, it's not a new concept that is being introduced. It's something that was first created in the Netherlands, the first time in the world, And then from there, it took off. It took off in different countries. And I saw it and I says, why not apply it to St. Martin? We have the salt pond that is being unproductive right now. Why can we not make use of it? We also have issues with land specifically for housing, so definitely not availability for farming. Hence, once again, the opportunity that we have to take of the salt pond to do float farming. What is float farming? It's built out of steel and it's anchored into the water, but the thing is that you can create all kinds of farming facilities on it. You can farm animals and you can also farm vegetables and so on and so forth. So as it says, when land becomes scarce, farm on water. And when food becomes scarce, high-tech farms for the future. This is also another point that is very important in the quality that you get and the quality and the quantity. By using high-tech farming, you get at. This is the video, it's a short video, maybe 2 minutes, a little over 2 minutes, of the gentleman that started the first floating farm in the world, Peter from the Netherlands. And he got this idea, as a matter of fact, after an experience he had in the States with hurricane. Let's listen to him. Do we have volume on this, please? Okay, what this gentleman is explaining, again, he was the first one to start this floating farm in the world. And he started with 40 cows producing milk and yogurt. And it is highly successful and today grew. As you go along, you're going to see that the design of the floating farm, but more importantly, next to it, you're going to see that they're using this water to have solar panels. This takes up valuable farming space. As you know, this is the floating farm. There is audio if it was possible. Then you could hear what they're saying. But if not, I can give an idea. This is the hurricane that the gentleman experienced in New York. And based on this, he got the idea to come with floating farms, because the reason he said the floating farm was one, land, but more so availability of products after a disaster. So self-reliance, self-sufficiency guarantees that availability of product in times of disaster. Hence the good idea put to work. Since then, this has been brought over to different parts of the world. Here you can see the illustration of what the gentleman made. Underneath you have educational facility, and on top you have cow farming. If I may, because of the volume we cannot hear, I would like to pass over to the next video. This is a solar-powered floating farm in Barcelona, Spain. It started with one. When they had one, they had 17 employees in one location, and it generated $1.6 million. So you can imagine if you have 10 of these producing different kind of farming facilities. Again, like I said, you can go into animal farming, but you can also go into vegetation farming, fruits and vegetables, trees and plants. You can also go into fish farming. These farms can be made so that in the sea, you can have fish, a variety of fish, and then you can even have the machines there to butcher them and clean them and do everything. The difference between this modern facility than the old one in Netherlands is that they have the solar panel mounted on top rather in the water on the side. So they have that extra water to put more farms. Besides the solar panels that you just saw there, you also have that it catches rain. You see the fish. What this says, instead of importing and exporting everywhere, you now have the facility to have these machines by your own country and then be self-sufficient. You don't have to rely on importation anymore. So here we cut importation. So we guarantee availability of product, and we also guarantee the quality and the volume of product that we want. This is a university in Wageningen in the Netherlands, where they do all kinds of tests on farming with vegetation and so. But here is where the use of techniques comes in to get guaranteed of production and the quality and quantity of production. They, for example, they use drones to kill the moths and so that eat the plants. That is one thing that also helps with the production. They have ways of you getting 8 times more production out of 4 times less water. All of this through studies and they have discovered this and they put it into production. Again, it would be nice if you have the sound that you can hear. This gentleman is in charge, one of the persons in charge there. And he gives an explanation of the volume of products that you can get compared to the limited use of water that you need. So this is very good. We can benefit from a great majority of fruits and vegetables and meat source that we can now have in-house rather than have to rely on, as we heard a couple of days ago, a container of $9,000 or $6,000 costs now $16,000 to come out of China. So if we can, as you can see here, the tomatoes is a sample of in Spain. What they're getting for 4 kilograms, you get 80 kilograms in Holland through this study that they did in the university. So it's interesting, if we like this program, to contact this university, have a visit there and see how they can help us realize our program here in St. Martin. And this is also, there we go. Yeah. This is also something that they promote there. No? They say they don't want to ship their products.
Offers really a possibility of producing a lot of food per square meter in a sustainable way.
The Dutch lead the world in tomato yield while using a fraction of the water that other countries use. But it's not just tomatoes. Measured by yield per square mile, they're the world leader in the production of chilies and green peppers and cucumbers. Number 5 for potatoes, onions, and carrots. The list goes on. But the bottom line is they've been able to get so much out of so little.
If we are able to produce 80 times more with 4 times less water, that's great. That's great news.
Most people know that greenhouses allow a grower to tweak every little thing. But the Netherlands is taking it to the next level. They've perfected the greenhouse as the ideal environment to continuously test and implement all kinds of ways to optimize growth. From things as simple as testing what use of LED lights can increase pest resistance and improve nutritional value, to things as crazy as moth-killing drones.
So at the moment we don't have any products who can control actually the moths, and then finally they will produce caterpillars, and those caterpillars.
So instead of using insecticides, you now use these drones, and you don't have your fruits and vegetables full of insecticides.
Also to see how it's flying, and then with his wings, propellers, it just will crush actually the moth.
Wow.
There's a relentless drive towards innovation to create better and more efficient growing techniques. They've even started taking the human touch completely out of it. Some of the latest tech relies on AI to learn pet behavior and constantly adjust conditions without any input from a farmer.
For example, what they're testing in this compartment is a climate computer, so with different sensors. And actually measure the planet, and based on the planet, the computer.
This is also very interesting because through the climate regulation, you can control exactly when you want your production, what type of production you want, because you regulate the climate. Do you want it to be rainy? Do you want it to be sunny? Exactly the weather that the plant needs to produce its best, you can control that through this technique.
They're able to replicate any climate on Earth to figure out what modifications need to be made to realize the same yields they're getting in the Netherlands and any other country on Earth.
We have a whole project going on with Colombia, and we can in fact maybe in Colombia, therefore in and see how crop behaves under circumstances that we have in Colombia. We can totally flip the seasons around. We can make it a sunny day on Christmas. We can close the curtains on a sunny day and make it completely dark. I think in the long run,
plants get exactly the conditions that they
should not be
have to put on my mask.
for the rest of the world. We should be a developer for the rest of the world. We are the country that will export our knowledge on creating production facilities all over the world.
Innovation starts really by bringing all these networks together. In the world we live nowadays, we need to link up with other people. You can't do it alone. We need to produce more, we need to
What we're
do less
promoting here
use,
is that
and we need to do it better.
cooperation so that other
Thanks a lot.
countries can also learn from them and establish it in their own countries rather than having to export from Holland. These are all the items that we can farm. We can farm animals and we can farm fruits and vegetables, and it can go on. Interesting here, I put it there, is rabbit, which is the other white meat. It's a very healthy meat and it's a very inexpensive meat. So all of this we can also introduce into the society. But more important here is that it is St. Martin made. It is produced in St. Martin. There is no shipping. There is no expensive shipping. There is no waiting on products to come in. It's readily available. It makes us self-sustainable. Besides, so in addition to the farming, we have solar power, we have wind energy, we have rainwater. So GB, there's an agreement that can be made with GB to supply GB with energy through solar power and wind energy that you capture. And then this can be sold to GB, and GB then in return can sell it to the community at a lesser price. As you heard earlier in the video, 8 times more production for 4 times less water, and the control through the computer-controlled moth killing and so on. Transformation. This is a very interesting part. Government collects, so government, the idea is first, let me rewind. The idea is for government to own this project. It's not something that should be in private hands, because then you do not see the benefit of the money that comes in. It goes into private pockets. The whole idea is to make a government self-sufficient, and thus having to not, we can move away from imposition of taxes on people. So once the vegetables are sold to the supermarket, they have waste. This waste is then collected and then fed to the animals, and the animals through their waste have fertilizers that the government, that the project then uses for fertilizing their plants. So it's a circle of life, a circle of win-win situation. An agreement can always be made with the vendors to say, hey, we'll pay you 5 cents on the dollar for your bio waste, so that you don't, they end up throwing it away now anyway, and it goes on the landfill. So rather than throwing it away, let us collect it and feed it to the animals. Here is a sample. If you look in the blue at the bottom here, you see that the floating farms are anchored. So if we have concerns, yes, this is in Martin, we are in the hurricanes and what happens. Of course, the technicians will come and they'll tell you which is the best way to make them for the country that you have and the situation that you find yourself in the country. All of that will be taken into account when the engineers are building the floating farm for you. This floating farm in particular is one that you want to add with the other floating farm, because this one takes salt water and cleans it up and makes it usable water for agriculture. So here we have in the pond, the water is not so good, but we put one of these and we clean the water of the pond, and we now have water to water our plants with. We don't only rely on the rain, which is insufficient, and we don't have to rely on GB for expensive water. We create our own water, thus bringing down the expenses. The way of financing this project, I put down the APS. It can be done through bond purchase or soft loans, but we can also approach the Netherlands, because so far it's been that the Netherlands finds itself in a situation where they always have to give us loans or grants in order to help us out of our predicaments when we have pandemics and so on and so forth. So I would say to Holland, well, why don't you lend us that money, maybe on a soft loan or maybe interest-free loan, so that we can become self-sufficient? Now, again, I want to go back on the one that you saw from Spain, where it says $1.66 million annually with 17 employees. So that's one facility. Imagine if you have 10 facilities, multiply that. So when I say that you can make good money with this project, you can indeed make a lot of money. It just needs to be properly managed, no? This is a project concept acquisition. It's given to government. The condition here would be that I would be then the supervisor of the project. But the government does not have to buy this project over. It's given because it's something that will benefit the country and the people directly. I consider it a part of the basket of goods. And yeah. Again, self-reliance and through sustainable farming. This is the end of the presentation of the first project. Are there any questions on this? Yes, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Your mic.
What do I do? Turn it off?
Yeah. Now, I would like to see on my left if any members of parliament have any questions, and I would like to do it one-on-one. So one MP asks the question and let Mr. Lewis respond to that, and then we go to the next MP. The first one, Mr. Akeem Arendal.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Thank you for the presentation. It was very clear. Also, I find it a very good idea also. My question, I get straight to my question is, do we have sufficient, like how you say, clean water for the space of the project? Like, say how just you say in case we depend on rain, all sorts of, you say we're making water, but do we have sufficient water in the pond?
Oh yes, most definitely, because we have.
That's one question. Ask for all one time?
Yes.
The way it sets up is you put your questions up, and then I'll give the floor to Mr. Lewis
Okay, so
to answer it back.
Ask everything one time.
No, you can ask everything one time, and then he'll answer you back.
Okay, no problem. Well, that was the first question. And for my other question, for now, how long do you see one of these projects, if we get the loan or the grant, you say from Holland, how long do you see one of these projects taking to build these farms? No problem. There we are, for now.
Thank you, MP Arundel. Mr. Lewis, you have the floor to answer now.
Thank you, and thank you for the questions, MP Arendel. Your first question is, do we have sufficient water? Yes, we do, because through the Rolandus Canal, you can pump excess water of the salt pond into the ocean. So we can have a reverse system that when we require water, we pump water into the salt pond. And then with the machine that you saw, that will then transform that water into usable water for planting. Not for drinking, but for planting. So that solves that issue of sufficient water. To your second question, first it takes government to decide that this is what we want to do for St. Martin. Once that is done, the steps would be to go to Holland to talk to this university and to talk to government of Holland. Put our proposal forward and put our request with the proposal forward. I think for setting up with the physical work, setting up and having it ready to function would take maybe 8 to 12 months to set one up. And then would be the pro forma type that you would say, the first one. Once you have the first one up, then it's a matter of setting the rest up, and that would be easier to assemble because you already have the first one assembled. What you need to do is decide which variety do you want to start with. For example, last year I made a donation to an agriculture farm, and I wanted the gentleman to plant certain plants, and he says, well, they're going to take too long before they bear. So he suggested other plants that would bear in a shorter time. This way you can immediately, in a short term, start making money, get in return on your investment. And then as you grow, you can go further and develop. For example, we know that we use a lot of chicken in St. Martin. Rather than putting a cow farm, let's put a chicken farm. Because we get quicker return. The chicken hatch quicker, we get eggs easier in a shorter time. So, and that's how you want to build up. No? You start small and you start with those that you can get a quick return on your investment. If that answers the question.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Louis. The next person I have is MP Angelique Rumo. MP Angelique, you have the floor.
Pleasant good morning to you, Mr. Chairman. A pleasant good morning to my colleagues. Pleasant good morning to the viewing and listening public, and of course to our guest this morning, Mr. Engel. Thank you for your presentation. I have a question because during the presentation, I was going to ask the question, but then you kind of answered my other question, but it's not quite clear. You said that you know that some questions might be concerning where would you have such a farm in terms of St. Martin being in a hurricane belt, and then it being a floating farm, it's on water, that may cause some concerns. So my question is, have you thought about certain areas or where you would consider having such a farm on St. Martin?
The floating farm?
Yes.
Thank you, MP Rumo. Mr. Lewis, you have the floor.
Thank you for the question, MP Romo. Yes, I thought of it. I did not illustrate it in my presentation, but it will be illustrated in my second presentation. It is the salt pond. The salt pond is there. It's not being used for anything except for gathering of the water that comes from the hills and then sending that water out to the sea. The salt pond, if we remember, was maybe the first source of income for St. Martin. That is what drew people to the shores of St. Martin. It drew the Indians to the shore of St. Martin. They made use of it for their livelihood, for the living, you know, salting their fish and so on. And then it moved on to a commercial business. We exported salt out of St. Martin. Why not put that pond back to a level where it can sustain St. Martin again, where it can bring income for St. Martin again? That is why I chose that location.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Anyone else? MP Brownbill, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon to my colleagues. Good afternoon to you, Mr. Engel. Good afternoon to viewers and listeners. Actually, I would like to trample back on actually my main question was from like what MP Rumo asked, and it was about the hurricane situations. Like how do you invest so much in a project like this? How do you protect it? What do you do when there's a major hurricane on its way? So that was my first question, but she came first, so I give her the credit for it. My second question was, you mentioned it's about plants and animals, right? So both plants and animals farming, right? So what would be the types then, the types of animals and the types of plants, or at least the main types that would contribute to the economy food-wise? And my last question would be, this would be like a greenhouse, right? It's almost like a greenhouse. Would it be like temperature controlled greenhouse? Would it have like, stuff that cannot be grown naturally in St. Martin, but you have a controlled temperature that you could get a variety of plants and vegetables that can be grown here? Thank you.
Thank you, MP Brownbill. Mr. Lewis, you have the floor.
MP Brownbill, thank you for your questions. For your first question concerning the hurricane, you will have to work, obviously, we will meet in the Netherlands with the university and with government, but we will be meeting also with engineers that know of this. So they will, as a matter of fact, in the presentation, it was mentioned that hurricanes are taken into consideration and they are built resistant. So it's a matter of the architect or the engineers coming and looking at what you have, so they know what they need to work with in order to establish something that is sustainable and reliable. But that it can be made, you saw in the one clip, you saw how it was anchored. again, it will have to be catered specifically to the location. They have to come and see, okay, this is your location, this is the bottom of the sea, this is what we need, this is how deep we have, and so on and so forth. That's why you have the engineers, and they will make their necessary calculations in order to make it hurricane resistant. So then you have it's hurricane proof, and then you also have the water that will be brought in so that you can sustain it. The variety of plants was also a question that you had, and animals. Like I mentioned earlier, you can put anything that you want, you can grow or you can have in your farm. You can also, like in your question, you went in that direction. You can indeed produce things that are not produced in our natural environment, say in the sun, because you can put it to grow in winter environment if you like. So you can grow strawberries, for example, or whatever requires cold. You set a setting so that you can have production of those type of fruits and vegetables. So you're not limited to what is in the Caribbean only. You want to have an avocado and a pumpkin growing there, but you can also have kiwi and whatever you can produce. Likewise, with animals, you can have any animals, those that we put on our plates, the pork, the chicken, the beef, fish. You can farm fish as well. So you can put anything that you want on your plate, and if it's something that we don't have, well, then you need to see if the market goes for it. But yes, you can farm that as well. Wise would be to start farming with what takes little time to set up and starts giving production and return on investment in a short time. And then you can always add and build up. So you can add up an example, start with chicken and pork because they are cheap and they sell good. And then you go on to cow and goat and lamb and so on and so on. But you can put everything you want. If I'm not mistaken, there was a third question.
No, actually,
Yeah? Okay.
Temperature, yeah.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Anyone else? MP Arundel, you have the floor.
Sorry, I just, by hearing everybody talk, I just think of two questions here also. Pertaining to the floating farms, they depend on electricity. Imagine a shortage happen, a malfunction. What would be the backup to say, okay, if something ain't work, so we have solar panels also, we have water, but imagine an error happen, what would be the solution? And also for my last question, with all these farms, depending on how much, do you think we make it a tourism attraction to also? Like make people come and see what's productive, what's going on, all these things. Like make it attractive for tourists and children and to like farming and all these different agriculture things. And one more thing too, and for our locals that we have an island too who's doing farming, would they have a say, like for preference to say for each farm to help grow these things too also? That would be it.
Thank you, MP Arundel. Mr. Lewis, you have the floor.
Thank you, President. MP Arundel, I was kind of confused with your questions. One was, sorry, if you can repeat them, please.
Sorry, the first one is pertaining to the short of the electricity.
Electricity, the second one?
The second one was pertaining to, do you see the farm them tourism, being attraction to tourism for children them, like they have horticulture, they have animals, they have farms, all the plants, maybe birds, we don't know, chickens, what you say. And also, I'm talking for our locals, like our local farmers who we have here on the island, like for each farm, because you say you got several farms, would it be having preference to say, okay, they have a farm for themselves to do horticulture too also?
Okay. The electricity, to your first question, thank you for the questions. The first question, the electricity, as I mentioned, it has its solar panels. You can also add wind turbines, yes. So you have those two to help you gather your energy, your electrical energy. You have sufficient of these farms, and each of these farms carries an abundance of panels, so it is self-sufficient for the farming. If it's enough, then you can make an agreement with GB to sell the extra, but the farm for itself, as you saw, the one in Netherlands, it is self-sufficient. If something happens, it would be something like a hurricane, then obviously precautions need to be taken. All these solar panels need to be taken down. But it's very simple and very easy to take down the modern solar panels, and in a very short time you take them down and you put them back up. Of course, then you need to consider storage for these. This would be something that you need to consider, is the storage for the solar panels, while you have to keep them safe. But the energy that you get is sufficient. As you saw, the one that produced for the cows gave sufficient energy. The same thing for the one in Barcelona, gave sufficient energy, and the one in Barcelona, they even added the turbines, the wind turbines to it. And they took away the use of the solar panels in the water, which takes away valuable farming space. So they added it on top of the floating farms. That was the electricity. Then you had the question on the tourism. Tourism can always be added on to any product that you have. You're going to see it in one of my other presentations. Tourism is only a byproduct. Your country has heritage and culture that identifies its people and the country. And that is sometimes attractive enough that brings in tourism. Tourism is something that we capitalize on, but we need to have something ourselves to attract the tourist to your shores. So yes, we can take the farms and make it some kind of a tour that they can go through and see it. Always possible, always additional income that you add on to the product that you are selling. But I also have tours for other projects, the second and the third presentations that I have, that include participation of tourists and guests so that they can see and play with animals as well. So mostly this one is more for commercial purposes, and a guided tour can be given of what it looks like and what the productivity is. So yes, it can be incorporated as a tourist attraction. And for your third question, if farmers can participate, farmers can always participate. It's the idea to have farmers come in and participate in more than one way, not only in productivity, but also in knowledge, so that they can learn more. A farming school can come out of it. People from other islands can come and learn here from it. So it's not only tourist, it's educational basis. You can also integrate into the process of making money out of the farming, out of this project. So you can, and the farmers then, the local farmers will then have an option to say, hey, we're going to work in these floating farms. Government will obviously hold the positions available for the existing farmers, but they will have to work under the conditions of the industry as it is set up. So they cannot be as an individual. They work maybe hired out. Maybe there can be two ways. They can be employees of government, right? So they don't have to have no investment. They just show up and whatever field of farming that they're in, that is where they will be working in, but as employees of government. Or government can say, well, which I personally do not recommend, it might be a little bit more difficult, say, okay, I rent you out the spot and you produce and you give me whatever money out of it. I do not subscribe to that second idea. I prefer for the farmer to say, okay, independent farming you do on your independent land. If you want to be part of this farming community, you have the choice of being an employee here, and that with that you have no investments, no loss, no worries about anything you need to do to run your farm. But you get the opportunity to run the type of farm. So if it's chickens you like to farm, well, yes, you will be able to work with that. Hope that answered your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. The next person I have is MP George. MP George, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, thank you, Mr. Engel, for the presentation. And that is just a discussion point and a project that we hope to get off the ground. One of the things you mentioned, because I don't think we have it, a question I have actually, do we have any such floating farm anywhere in the Caribbean region? Number one. Secondly, you mentioned that in order to get it going, we have to go to the Netherlands in order to get the engineers as we put the project together or the structure together. At the same time, you mentioned the issue of hurricane resistance. Now, if there's none in the Caribbean region, probably, or if there is, then my question is, how do we determine that the engineers in the Netherlands will have the know-how in order to put a structure in place that will withstand the kind of category hurricanes we had on St. Martin? Because if we had one in the region already, then I know exactly we had floating farms that went through a hurricane, so you have an idea as to what a kind of wind pressure they can sustain. But if there's none there, then I kind of would like to know exactly how would it be determined by engineers in the Netherlands as to what a structure in our area or on St. Martin will be able to withstand. I think that's it for now, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much.
Thank you, MP George. Mr. Lewis, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. MP George Pantaflat, thank you for your questions. Your first question, to my knowledge, it does not exist in the Caribbean. To my knowledge, it started in the Netherlands. It is in Spain. It is in Asia, in a couple of countries. But no, it has not spread to this part, not even to the United States, Central, South America. I did not find it. So we would be the first, we would be a trendsetter in that regard, should we do that. To your question on how do the engineers in the Netherlands know to make a structure hurricane proof, pretty much everything that is made, a ship, a house, takes putting figures and calculations and so together and making test models. And through the test models, you get answers on what the capacity of resistance the structure that you build has against any acts of nature. I guess this is the same protocol that any engineer would follow, is to say, okay, this is what we have. We have hurricanes, we have these strengths of hurricanes, so this is what we need to take with us in our calculations, and this is how we construct buildings and ships that can go on the oceans with a hurricane. It can be done. It just, you need to have, again, what I said, they need to come here, they need to look at the salt pond, they need to take measurements of the sand, the type of soil, and so on, in order for them to make their calculations. But for it to be possible, yes, it can. No, yes, it can. We've made other things hurricane resistant, so we can make that hurricane resistant as well.
Yes, MP George, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Engel. The reason why I asked that question again, and yes, of course, I understand the issue of having models and having testing and so on, because our airport is one of the prime examples as to engineers that thought they would withstand a particular hurricane strength and definitely did not. So I really hope that based on that, now they use at least a better calculation to determine, so because building on sea, let me use sea, and a physical structure, they are two different things. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
If I may, because part of your
Thank you, MP George. Mr. Lewis, you have the floor.
Thank you. My apologies. If I may, part of your question was also concerned that going to Holland with this. This is the whole thing again. No, you go to Holland because you can go through, for example, Spain or to Asia and get it there as well. But by going to Holland, you show Holland that we as a country are taking the initiative to be self-reliant. I think that then Holland will be more inclined to work with us, and seeing that it is an investment that they will be making into St. Martin, that they would make sure that that investment is well secured. So very, very much attention will be given to making sure that it will be hurricane resistant. Not St. Martin side, not the Netherlands side being the ones that are involved in it, maybe even to the extent of financing it, want to see a project that fails. So I think a lot of work will go into the engineers coming up with the right way of setting it up.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis, and I believe MP George has
Yeah, just a
one
final
more
remark.
question. MP
Actually, a
George, you
remark-
have the floor.
Yes, just a final remark, because I understand what Mr. Engel is saying, and my issue is I would like to think that St. Martin also have engineers who have studied, who live on island, who have an idea exactly as to the structures that have to be built in order to withstand those things also. But again, thank you very much for the initiative. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, MP George. Well, I don't see any more questions from any other MPs, but I would like to add up some of mine. But before I move, I just saw a message from MP Sarah that she had sent her notification of not coming for the meeting, and due to some technical errors, it was not here on the table, but I would like to announce it now that she had already sent the message. Basically, I had written a lot of questions about your presentation, but eventually, as I was going through, the answers were coming up right there and then. But still, I would like to ask you, what effect will this cause on the ecosystem? What's the investment to build up such type of floating farm, even if you start on a small scale, like just farming chicken and a couple of things, like how you mentioned about starting on a lower level and then moving up? What kind of investment are we looking? And I had the hurricane question also, but most of them have asked. And the other one is, have you had a meeting with the APS? Since you were mentioning about they can be one of the investors, have you met them yet?
Thank you for the opportunity. Knocking on Holland's door or using our local engineers to see what the cost would be to set it up, which would bring us to your first question. No, I do not have the cost of it, because it's just a concept that I developed. The concept needs to be decided upon if it's something if it's something workable, if it is something that we want to have. So is it workable, one? Is it something that we want to have, two? And if we decide those two things, and then we say, okay, how do you want to go forward with it? Do we want to get involvement of Holland? Do we want to do it on our own? If we want to do it on our own, well, then is when we sit down with APS and ask them as one of the avenues. It's not the only avenue. It was mentioned as a avenue. Like I said, we can also knock on Holland's door. But investment can be sought. Investment is easily achieved once your business plan is well prepared. So the first step would be indeed to talk with people to see if it's realizable. Once it's realizable, and then you're going to see what the cost factor is in it. And once you have the cost factor, you can easily calculate your return on investment as well.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis, but I believe to differ a little bit from here, because when you present a plan, I believe one of the important characters in that should be how much it costs. Otherwise, you will not have a complete solid support from people that they agree or they disagree to it. So I would like to keep my difference as a MP over there, but it's still your call. And moving on, I believe in your, you were mentioning that you have some more presentations or some more plans that you want to
Yes,
go on.
indeed, I do it, yes.
So we have totally how many of them?
Two more.
Two more to come. So now we are going on the second one.
To the second one.
MP Louis Engel, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. And I want to introduce you to, I like the name Swaliga. It's something that sits well with me. So I chose that. It's not necessarily the name that we have to use. If government decides to take these projects on, government is free to use whatever name they want to attach to it. Fun pond is because the pond will be made, transformed into a fun activity. It's an attraction in the Great Bay Salt Pond. And this attraction is to develop the tourism and economic situation of St. Martin, to bring in more people to St. Martin and to bring in more money in the country. This, again, we are staying with the salt pond because we only used part of the salt pond for the floating farms, and the other part, well, again, it was a salt pond. It was producing salt for us back in the old days, and St. Martin had a livelihood from it. Why don't we maintain that same concept, but instead of making it a product for sale per se, so we're selling only salt, we can sell the salt, we'll mine the salt and sell it, but as a tourist attraction, as a souvenir, we'll make it more into an attraction that people can visit. There are two ways of visiting this attraction. If you see little boats. These are tied together on a chain, and then underwater you have a chain that pulls them, and they have a specific route that they take that will lead you around the island. On the island you will see salt workers. These are mechanical dolls, and they will be having movements and so, you hear sound, talking and singing. And then in the back, you have actual salt mines. They will not be big, they will be small, with people mining salt there, and that is what we will then use for the souvenir shop. The train ride, people take a train ride, and then they go around and through. This is just a simple illustration that I had made. If you want to do it, like you said, if you want to know the numbers, well, then you have to first take a decision, do I want to do it? Once you take a decision, yes, I want to do it, well, then there's the research that needs to be done. And once the research is done, then you say, okay, this is feasible or not. So yes, the numbers are very important, but there are one or two steps prior that lead you to the numbers. You need to do things that lead you to the numbers. But the thing is it attractive enough for us to decide we want it? So yes, we're going to bring back the concept of St. Martin producing salt, that's hence the name Swaliga, and the people will then take train rides and boat rides to enjoy mechanical dolls moving around as if they're harvesting the salt, a lady walking around, again a mechanical lady, singing, but with a chart of water and you know, something with food to give to the people. And the train, if I may, the idea for the I could not illustrate everything because it's too expensive for my budget. Then you have to come, that you can go in between with the train and then continue around and come back out. So the train goes in, and then people can also walk and take their selfies and enjoy it. And then you can also, with the boats, go around while you have water fountains. That also help keep the water fresh, but also makes it attractive. The key here is this project, again, is the intention for government to own and operate. I will, later on, I will elaborate more on this, but it's very important that government owns and operate these three projects. The reason is if it's in private hands, the country will not benefit as it would if government would own and operate it. And it's not new. I will also show other countries that own and operate attractions. Here you can see the two of them together, the floating farm and the salt pond fun attraction. A country does not live from tourism. It lives through its culture. Tourism is only a consequence. You have the product, people will come. The more you develop the product, the more people will come. And we do, we have products, so we need to capitalize on them. These are things that we can do there. We can have, for example, in the States and in Canada, you have catch and release. You go fish, but you're not allowed to take the fish with you. You have to release it back into the water. You have a small market for that, so you can add that on. in the future, you can also add on rowboating and so on. You can make use for additional income. But the purpose of the project is an ecotourism attraction. Type of attraction, it's a simulated salt mining production with life-size robotic figures and movements and sounds. And you tour it through train rides and boat tours. You have additional attractions like the fish sport, catch and release, rowboats and paddle boats. The owner of the company will be Government of St. Martin. It will be a semi-public entity. The proposed location, again, the Great Bay Salt Pond. The composition of the project is a day and nighttime paid attraction. The purpose, revenue increase for Government of St. Martin. Direct player, St. Martin government. Unique opportunity to capitalize on the tourism industry as a direct player. The practice of government owning and operating tourist attraction is not uncommon and is found on various islands in the Caribbean. Governments with tourist attraction. Aruba, for example, has the Archaeological Museum, the Bombini Festival, Renaissance Island. Barbados has the Harrison Cave, we all know, with the train that you go through the cave. Curaçao has the Grot van Hato and the St. Christoffel Park. St. Martin has tourism as its single pillar industry, but it is a strong and viable industry. The government benefits immensely from direct investment in this industry. Key partners, Council of Ministers approval, Parliament approval, the Ministry of TEATT to establish government-owned company, and the Minister of ROMI for land acquisition, water rights, and building permits. And then, of course, the governor to sign off on the value proposition. The salt pond was once a natural resource commodity production that today has the potential to generate livelihood once again. The proposed concept for development is an ecotourism attraction in the salt pond. There was a question early on eco, I think MP Panaflet made that question. Okay, yes, MP Arendel. So the ecotourism is part of the attractions. So you can introduce them in all the attractions, equally so in the farming. This is a friendly attraction. It's light exercise. As you can see, people in wheelchairs can make use of it, so it does not prevent anybody to go to the attraction. There's no hill climbing, there's no rough walking. Everything is smooth and comfortable so that people can comfortably enjoy their trip through the attraction. Marketing channels. On the international level, we will market through the cruise lines because we know we have the majority of our visitors come through the cruise lines. And the social platforms, so we have Facebook and all of those that we will advertise on. And then Caribbean islands. This is where I want to capitalize on. St. Martin is well known in the Caribbean for shopping. All the islands of the Caribbean come to St. Martin to do their shopping, but their children stay home. They don't know St. Martin, and others that don't come for shopping, well, they don't come to St. Martin at all. Let's give them the rest of the Caribbean. Let's give them a reason to come to St. Martin. Let's have attractions. They don't need to go all the way to the States to go to parks. They can stay within the Caribbean and enjoy parks. So in the Caribbean islands, we will try, if it is possible, we'll have billboards on the roads leading to the airport and brochures at the airline counters so that we have visibility. And on the local level, again, billboards on the main road, public roads, airport and harbor, and obviously newspaper ads. The Caribbean, opportunity to reach new customer segments. Marketing in the Caribbean islands will provide further export market segments for the attraction. Like I mentioned earlier, we only have the people that come for shopping. Now let's bring their families and those that just want a vacation to St. Martin. We can count on at least a couple of 100,000 people there. Customer segments. Group of customers. The main group of customers obviously are the visitors. We have the locals as well, but the locals go in once or twice, and then unless they have some special occasion, they will not attend. But tourists, that is where you get your volume of people coming into your park. Children up to 3 years of age are permitted free, but only one child per family or per group. customer segment differentiation. What makes the customer wants to come to this type? What type of people will come? Well, everybody will come because everybody pretty much cares about nature and wants some kind of fun-filled attraction. And it offers both of them. So there's no reason for somebody to say, well, this is not done the way nature should go. I'm against the damage that it can do. It is all building up of the ecology, building up of the heritage of the island. So it's something that everybody would like to be part of. Revenue stream. Aside from entrance ticket sales, you have food and beverage that is sold, you have souvenir sales, you have the sports fishing like I mentioned, and row and paddle boats. To capitalize on revenue, tickets are sold of various specific visiting opportunities per day. This will help to properly manage attractions and grounds and prevent visitors from remaining for a long period at the attraction. What do you have here? If it's just walk in and buy a ticket, you'd never have a group of people that you can manage properly, and you have a one in, one out. It's best if you have the group of people managed, so you say, okay, at specific hours we have specific rides, the boat or the train rides, and then people make sure that they are there, and that's where you fill your ride. Because to have a ride go out with a handful of people is non-productive. You have to pay the electricity to manage these rides, so you want to have the rides full. Hence, you want to have specific hours for the rides to depart, commence, and start. Opening hours and days. The intention is to open every day except for official holidays. Open 9 o'clock might be a little early, but it all depends. Again, this is where the research is done, what is best. Maybe 10 o'clock rather than 9 o'clock. And then 7:30, is it too early to close? Should we go on longer? All of that will be identified in the studies. With the market studies, we'll get those answers. Potential ticket cost. As you can see, for a daytime ride, a boat ride, $17.50 if you're 12 years and older, and $12.50 if you're 4 years. You say this might sound a lot, but if you consider the attraction that the people are getting, the boat ride and the train ride, and aside from that, they also get to enjoy the walk through the attraction. It's a combination that gives them a specific time that they have the ride in, but sufficient additional time for them to cruise the facility, go into the souvenir shop. The souvenir shop can be made we can have, for example, books by local artists and sell everything in that souvenir shop. Right? And so you have different prices for daytime tours and nighttime tours. And based on these calculations, I came up with the income potential of $7 million per year. How did I come up to this? I took the total amount based in an average of 10 years of cruise arrivals and overnight visitors. And from that, I took, if I may come closer, if you can see here, it's 1 million plus cruise arrivals. I took 15% of those to come to the park, and the same thing for the overnight. I took 60% of the people because then they are staying on the island longer. It gives them more time to come, so more people will come. On a cruise, you have so much things to do, so it is divided the amount of the percentage of people that will come to your attraction and share to other attractions. But the ones that are overnighting can go to all attractions, and that's why you can have the percentage higher. Then from that percentage, again, I broke it down into adults 12 and older and 4 to 11. And so you come down, Parliament can take its time. You have this document on you to see, how do you say, scrutinize it. And of course, you will have the accountant or so that will sit down and make the official calculations. Once it's decided, hey, this is something good, we want to further pursue it. But yes, this preliminary calculation shows you the potential of the business. Now, again, you want to be sure that it has potential, so you go to the projected feasibility report. This is, you conduct a preliminary analysis. You prepare a projected income statement. You conduct a market survey, the plan of organizational structure of the new project, prepare an ongoing day balance of projected expenses and revenues. You review and analyze the points of vulnerability that are internal to the project and that can be controlled or eliminated. You decide whether to go on with the project. And then the project assessment report that consists of viability and ability to mitigate and navigate impacts by delivering on the positives. The estimated budget for the project, the general schedule that will be followed on the execution of the project, the ability to execute the necessary efforts needed to be exerted to accomplish the project, the members who will be directly in charge of the project, the urgency by which the project needs to be carried out, the contractors that will be involved in the project, other underlying issues and concerns that need to be addressed. This is also a very interesting part of the presentation because this is where environmental issues come into play. We want to build the island, as you saw in the first two slides, on which we want to make the attraction, where the train, for example, where the train rides. We need to build an island. Early on, there was a question on the cleanliness of the lagoon water. It is the intention to pull out all the silt from the lagoon so you don't have that anymore, and that also gives you a better anchorage for whatever you want to anchor against hurricane. And that silt will be stored aside. And then we have Nature Foundation. We read not too long ago that they permitted a ship to be sunk so that we can create coral reefs. The reason that ship is permitted to be sunk, it's because it's steel. Everything that is not steel has to be removed because that can be cause a problem in the ocean, right? Like rubber and so are not good. But as long as it's full steel, just like concrete, it works well with the ocean. It helps actually to create coral life. And that is why that ship will be sunk. Many ships are sunk for diving tours because then you have the coral that grows and fish come, so people go diving by the ships. Okay. We have a lot of wreckage in St. Martin keeping our island ugly. Let's start cleaning some of these wreckages. We can't take many, but we can take some of them and we can put them in the bottom of the lagoon, of the salt pond, and then on top of that throw the silt. And this is how we created our island, by cleaning the island of St. Martin from ugly debris. We create an island and we clean the lagoon in the process. So it's a win-win situation. The environment benefits from it. So it's something that also we want to consider. Is this something that we want to do? And then just like we would then need the input of Nature Foundation in this regard. But it all starts, again, with government wanting to do it. If government says we want to do this, and then it's what steps are to be taken. But if government says, well, we don't want this, well, then it will not materialize. But once you say you want to do it, it can happen. It's just a question from how long will it take to happen, and what do you give priority. And that's why my presentation was the farm first, because that will bring in money right away first. These will take like 3-4 years to develop. But yeah, financing against the Netherlands. Why the Netherlands? Because it's a viable option vis-a-vis financial support. We're always, knocking on the door. We need money. We need, and here we have our own income, so that we don't have to rely on other sources of income anymore. Project concept acquisition. This project, unlike the one for the farm, I give it to the country of St. Martin to develop. The only input of mine there is that I will be the project manager. This project, however, is for sale to government. It's my concept. I created it. It's for sale to government. This is something that we then will have to sit and discuss again. Does government want it? What does it entail? What does it cost for government to acquire it? Swaliga Fun Pond, tourism industry that benefits the country. This was the second presentation. If we have any questions you want to go to.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. A very wide presentation, and I believe the questions might be very less because it was very impressive. But still, I'll look into my left and see if anyone has any questions. MP Brownbill, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So to you, Mr. Engel, so to sum it all up in terms of the budget for everything, for this whole project, the two projects, right? And the maintenance costs, do you have an average of how much it will cost to maintain with staff and, you know, electricity and the whole?
No, again, this is research that has to be put in place. You need to, you know, see what all it requires. This is in the presentation. It tells you all the steps that need to be taken. And then you say, okay, which one comes first and which ones cost money? For example, where do we have to pay people to get their contribution into preparation of the plan? And that is why the first step would be, okay, we know we need all of this. We know that it takes financing. So is it something that if financing is in place, if it's well structured, if like you said, if we can guarantee that it can be made hurricane proof, okay, now we know that all our questions are answered, and then we say, okay, yes, we want this. And now that we say we want this, what is it that we need to do to get it? Okay, one of the things would be to sit with engineers, to look at the plans, to see what it entails to realize the plan. But you cannot just say, well, I expect this to cost this much, because there's too much information that you need to put together for you to come to what am I going to get out of it. It's not simple that you can say, okay, I plan to do 40 cows, I get this money out of it, or I plan to put this attraction and I plan to sell so many tickets. This is, as you see, I put that together, but to get detailed information and correct answers, you need to for example, pay an accountant. And who is going to pay for that accountant? And that is why it's important for government to say, hey, we want to do this, and if we want to do this, okay, this is what we have to come up with. We have the project developer, and the project developer needs to work with a team to get to the final decision. Okay, this is the numbers, this is what it looks like. Yes, the numbers that Mr. Engel came with are close or far, so no, it's not reliable, so let's drop it. Or yes, it's good, let's go ahead with it. But somebody needs to pay to do that research phase of it. All right? And that would be government that says, okay, I think this has sufficient viability in it. I am willing to invest in it. And then we say, okay, but government does not have the money. That is why we go. We don't always want to go and knock on people's door, but we need to go and knock on the doors that can help us stand on our feet. And once we stand on our feet, then we can move forward independently. But if it takes left or right to help us with knowledge and with financing, we got to look at all the options that are on the table. And again, I say if we go to Holland and we say, hey, we have this idea, but it's going to cost us initial investments into see if it's possible, do you have the technical help that you can give us so that we can mitigate these costs? This is lobbying again. You're talking to the Netherlands in order to have an opportunity to execute your project without you needing to have necessarily the financing in place, if you can understand. Yeah. It's not, you don't always need money. You need to have a good idea. If you have a good idea, if you can get people to see that your idea is a good idea, the people will come up with the money. That's usually how investments are done. So we don't have to worry too much about, yeah, but the St. Maarten government doesn't have money. Money can always be you can always get the money, as long as you have a good plan. If that answers the question.
Thank you, Mr. Engel. Angle. I have MP George, the next person on. MP George, you
Thank
have
you,
the
Mr.
floor.
Chairman, very much, and thank you, Mr. Engel, for that presentation. Kind of the devil's advocate, because I saw where you, on one of the slides, you had a presentation where you stated income potential of $7 million plus. But what is the investment to come to that 7 million? Because if you can show that you'll make a plus, what did you use as a measurement to say, well, I invest X, Y, Z, and therefore I'll make 7 million plus? I didn't really get it at all out of the presentation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP George.
Thank you for
Mr. Lewis, you have the floor.
Thank you for the question, MP Pantaflat. To come to the number of or the potential number of income is easy because you look at your source of income. In this case, it will be the visitors to the park. And the visitors to the park will be, well, the people that live on the island, but mainly the tourists that come to the island. That's where your bigger group of numbers is that will visit your attraction. Those numbers are available. We know the statistics of the number of people that come in through the airport and the number of people that come in through the harbor. So we have daytime tourists and overnight tourists. And from that, like you said, we took a percentage of that come. So the total number for 15% of tourists that would come off the cruise ship. And from that 15%, it'll be divided between the 12 and older and 4 to 11. And that gives you an idea of how much money you can make because you already established the cost, the entrance cost. But your expenses need to be clearly identified in order for you to know, okay, these are now my expenses, and this is my income, and now is this viable? And that is where it takes the report of an accountant that can give you that information, and with that information, you take your final decision. Yes, this is viable, I want to do it. But you need to have that experience as a businessman. You cannot quite drum up all the numbers that you need. You need to work with, for example, an accountant. You need to work with engineers that tell you, well, in order for me to get this, it takes this type of investment. And once you have all of that, and then you put it all on the paper, you say, okay, these are all my expenses, and this will be my source of income, and then I put them together. But to now think, hey, what would my expenses be would be kind of difficult to calculate at this stage.
MP George, you have a remark on it?
Yes. I'm trying to follow because I know Mr. Engel is a businessman. He's been in business many years. About 10 years ago, when I was trying to open a little business, the bank wanted a, what you call it again? The bank wanted a, you had to make income and expenditures. Yes, exactly. So I sat down and I put down income and expected expenditures, and I submit this. But from what you're saying now, you're telling us what you're saying, what we can make, 7.7 million, but we do not know what we're gonna start up with, what is gonna be a startup point. It's good to calculate the income if I'm gonna sell it for X, Y, Z based on data, but what is gonna be my investment in order to come to that you're talking about there?
Thank you, MP George. Mr. Lewis, you have the floor again.
Thank you.
Mr. Lewis, could you turn on your mic?
Sorry. Yeah, again, thank you for the question, MP Pantaflat. To go to the bank to get financing, you indeed need a business plan which has the expenditures and the income statements within the business plan. The difference here is that the investor needs to, there is no bank yet to go to. There is a potential investor that wants to get an idea that they can make money from, right? And now this investor says, hey, I heard of this idea is good, is not good. Well, if it's not good, well, I don't want to hear any. It's good, but I need further information. That is where you are at now. You need further information. Now, for me to go invest in this further information, it's going to cost me a big pocket. Then to come to government and government says, well, I'm not interested in doing this, would not be wise for me to do. And that is why you come first to government and says, hey, this is a concept. Do you like the concept based on the information that you have, which clearly states that all of these procedures need to be followed? It was mentioned in the presentation. And then, okay, yes, we like this, but we need to know further information. What will it cost us? Okay, for us to know what it will cost us, we need to make a slight investment. We need to go to a professional and say, hey, calculate this for us, see if it's realistic or not. And that's where government will have to say, okay, whatever it costs for a big company or how you say, accounting firm to make the required calculations, and then you have the expenditure report, and then you can say, okay, this is something feasible. But for me to go and make an expenditure report without knowing if government even is interested in this, it's as a businessman, you don't want to throw away money like that. You sell a concept, is the first step, and if the concept is something that is interesting, then you're going to look at the feasibility of it, and that is what you're requesting, the feasibility of it. And the feasibility of it requires special attention. It requires people with knowledge in the field. And then a decision need to make, and do we want to get that information? Then we have to pay for it. It's not a big investment. It's a report from an accounting company. So you might be looking at maybe, what, between $20,000 and $50,000, and you have a report in your hand. This would be then the initial investment that government makes. And then government say, am I willing to pay this $20,000 or $50,000? Well, for what I see, yes, or for what I see, no. That's a decision government has to make. If the government says yes, well then, okay, where are we going to get that, which firm? Let's put out a bid, which firm wants to do it, and for what price, and a payment arrangement. But pretty much this would be the first investment that government has. It's paying an accounting firm to make that report, the feasibility report. I will be part of it, of course, because I will give the input of what it is that we're going to make and how we're going to get to it. So yes, I will be involved in it, but you need an accounting firm to make that report. It's just like I run a business, but I have an accountant that prepares my financial reports always to send it to the tax office. You need their involvement. I don't know if you in order for you to go to the bank, you have a small business, you can sit and make your calculations yourself. But if it's a bigger business, you're going to require the attention of an accountant to put all the numbers together in order for you to go to the bank. And this is where we are at. Government needs to decide, hey, we want to do this, we need to go to an accountant before we go to the bank. And the bank would be then APS or Holland or whoever, but we need to go to the accountant first.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. I see MP George would like to ask
Yeah,
further.
just a funny matter, because again, I'm trying to weigh, because I understand the issue of going to an accountant and paying $50,000 and so on, but the accountant, $50,000 is chicken feed. I was looking at what is going to cost government or the investor, because again, you showed us where you make $7.something million and plus, but I'm not gonna, if I gotta pay $50,000 to an accountant to make $7 million, I wouldn't think twice. What is gonna be my investment cash flow? Because when looking at the project is gonna cost for investment. I mean, contractors, I mean, you name it, materials, you name it, it's going to cost. But what that cost is, the account is going to tell me that, you know, basically. But again, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much for the response, and I'll leave it at that for now.
Thank you, MP George. And I see on my left no more MPs have any other questions on this. As I said, the presentation was in depth, so basically everyone understood quite. I had one remark to make was you mentioned on the list nighttime attraction, but besides a train ride, I didn't see anything of nighttime attraction. So could you just elaborate on what you're thinking as a nighttime attraction?
No, the attraction. Thank you for the question, President. The attraction itself, it's one attraction that caters to the public during the daytime, and it caters to the public during nighttime. That is daytime and nighttime attraction. So you can go to the attraction in the daytime if you like, which is usually the cruise passengers that would go to the daytime attractions. But you also have the nighttime attraction, and that's why it says, I mentioned 7:30, but it can be later depending on the market demand, that you say, okay, I stay open maybe until 9 o'clock, because you have the tourists that are staying over on the island that don't want to necessarily go in the rush when you have all the tourists from the ships going. They want to go when it's a little more calmer, so they want to go at night. And that is why the prices of the nighttime attraction it's again the same attraction, but because it's at nighttime, it's a little bit more costly, the entrance ticket, because your functioning expenses are more. At night you have, for example, electricity that you have to, your bill goes up. So that's why the tickets will also be more expensive at night. But it just gives the public an option to say, hey, I want to go in the daytime or I want to go in the nighttime. That's day and nighttime.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. You want to continue with your final presentation?
Yes. And I thank you for your indulgence, because I was made aware that I get maybe 20-25 minutes, and I see we passed that over, and I still have your interest. So thank you very much for that. The third, number 3. Yes, this is it. Again, the name Swaliga. This time we're talking about an Orton Botanical Garden and a Caribbean Sea Life Aquarium. The location for this will be in the Simpson Bay Lagoon, and again, it's a tourism and economic development plan. Again, a St. Martin government-owned and operated tourist attraction for the same reasons that I stated in the first ones. The money goes further within the community when government owns it than if a private individual owns it. As you can see, it consists of 2 parts. The first part is the transit point. This is where the buses and the taxis come, the private vehicles come and they park. And then you have facilities. You have, for example, toilets, you have the ticket booth, you have animal shelter in case of a hurricane where the animals will be taken and kept safe there. And then you have here, you have the wharf. And you take the boats and you cross over and you go to what we know in St. Martin as Little Chicken in the Simpson Bay Lagoon. You know the 2 islands that we have, the one close to the airport, that's Little Chicken. Well, I've been told that's called Little Chicken, and the bigger one belongs to the French side, and that's called Big Chicken. That's what I've been told. So, I might have the name wrong or not the official name, but we know which island I'm talking about, or which location we're talking about. And then you come to the island, and it's an Orton Botanical Garden. Orton Botanical Garden is a variety of cactus, different type of cactuses that you get. Why cactuses? Because we're a Caribbean island, that is what grows naturally. But it does not limit us to cactus within the Caribbean. We can take cactuses from any part of the world, as long as it's cactus, and we can highlight them in our park. You cross a path and you go in the attraction, and here was a question mix with the animals. There's an opportunity here. You're going to see it in other slides. But you also have a sea aquarium. Now here's the nice thing about it. It's not fish enclosed in a tank. It is more fish swimming in the Simpson Bay Lagoon, and around them there will be a tank built. You will see the picture of that as well. So it's not like, we're holding the animals captive. They're enclosed, but they're swimming in their own environment. We wonder if you can really put, it's a tunnel that we're going to have under the water, and you walk in the tunnel and you see the fish swimming in front and over you. You wonder, is that possible? This is a restaurant that is sunk 5 meters under the water so that people go in that restaurant and sit and eat. So yes, it is possible to be underwater. There's no sound in it, but this tells you that it's 5 meters underwater. This is a company, one company. As such, there are more, but this is the one company that I approached to see if my project can be made. Can it be made? Can it be hurricane resistant? And this is their answer, yes. What they need, again, their technicians have to come here and they have to look at the bottom of the sea and so on and so forth to make the calculations in order to guarantee a product that is hurricane resistant, but it can be built. Proposed concept is for an art and botanical garden, again, a cacti garden and an aquarium. Type of attraction, again, an ecotourism attraction. Company owner, government does not change. Semi-public entity does not change. Proposed location, like I mentioned, the chicken island, the little chicken island. Again, it's daytime and nighttime attraction, meaning that it's open during the day and it's open during the night. Again, the purpose, economic development. This is the little chicken and the surrounding water, the blue, that should be then the aquarium. And then this is then the mainland. If you see the two lines that follow down to the bottom of the screen, this is land available that government owns on the strip of the airport. If government likes this project, then government would have to start considering if this land, of any of these lands, are available, and if not, which point that can be used in order for us to have a transit point. Logic would have to have a transit point in Simpson Bay, somewhere by the lagoon, to make the ride shorter. I don't know if government has plans already for those properties. If not, it is something that can be used. Why should government own this? Private sector, again, we know it always, the money, we have issues collecting taxes and so on and so forth. Let's make it easy. Let government own it, and then government has the means to distribute to the people. I think people will embrace that much better. The government plays a pivotal role as facilitator, yet reaps insignificant benefits. The government is charged with the well-being of the people and must therefore make use of all its resources to meet this end. Here we show again that St. Martin would not be the first, would not be a trendsetter in governments owning companies and operating companies, because it's done by our neighbors. Key partners is the same as in the others. We have the Council of Ministers approval, Parliament approval, Ministry of TIATT that executes it all together with Ministry of Romy, and then the governor to sign off on it. Little Chicken is presently designed as a protected area. The proposed designation is to have it protected and conservation area, because here we will have our goats and our mongoose and our St. Martin snake, if we can find one of those, and we put them there so that people can see our indigenous animals. Local flora and fauna, as well as Caribbean sea life, will have a haven to flourish in their natural habitat while serving as an attraction. This is what people will see when they're there. When you walk through the botanical garden, this is an idea of what it looks like. It's very serene, very peaceful. And then underwater, you're walking in a tunnel and you see the fish swimming in front and over your head. Interaction with animals is possible because you have the iguana and the little baby pigs and so on. We have monkeys in St. Martin. We can catch and train little baby monkeys to make them passive so that, it can be done so that you have it all over the world, just like you do make a baby iguana passive so it doesn't bite and you can take pictures. you can do it with a monkey as well. If people decide, well, they don't want to do it, but yeah, it can be done because you have animal pet zoos everywhere, and monkey is a pet animal. Core values remain the same. It's eco-friendly, it's light exercise, and it's physically impaired friendly. Channels also, we go to the cruise lines and we advertise there, social medias, local and in the Caribbean, we do our advertising. Customer segments, the tourists, again, are the biggest group of visitors that we have. Children up to 3 years of age get in free. It'll appeal to all people because, again, it's nature. Everybody likes to see a peaceful garden to walk in, and everybody likes to see fishes swimming around. No harm done to the environment, so you will not have any complaints about it. New markets, I still say that the Caribbean market is a market that we can tap into. We have the American market, we have a small part of the Dutch market, but the Caribbean market, as far as we know, is limited to shopping in St. Martin. Let's make St. Martin an attraction place to come to. Revenue streams. Again, entrance ticket sales, food sales, souvenir sales. And in order to capitalize on revenue and ticket sales, we have specific opening hours for the tours. This will help to manage the grounds and so on. We're open. Again, here I want to maintain the closure at 7:30 because we're dealing with fish, sea life, not fish, sea life, and you cannot expose them to light all day long. So 7:30 is a good time to shut off all the lights so they can have their rest again, and then you have the nature lovers cannot complain. Unlike with a salt tour that can go on late, longer, this one has to have a shorter duration. Ticket prices for the type of event. Also, again, these are prices that I come up with, but once a research is done by the accounting firm, all these things will be established. Are these prices correct? Are they feasible? You know, or is it something that you have to make it a little less? You can make it a little more. All these questions will be answered. The first question is this interesting for government to pursue? The first one said 7 million. This one says 11 million annually. The reason why is because it offers more and you pay more for the entrance ticket. So you have, again, you have percentage of people that you expect to come to the attraction. But what makes it different is that the attraction is a bigger and better attraction, so it costs more. Same as in the first project, a feasibility study needs to be done, an assessment report needs to be made, and then again, to build the island, we will remove all the tires and all the things that are not good for the environment, but clean up our roads, our side roads from all big debris, and use that to build our island. The island needs to be expanded, so here is a possibility of expanding the island with the approval of Nature Foundation, because it's the same concept as they followed with the sinking of the ship. Financing, the Netherlands, why an interest-free loan if we can manage that? Why? Because it's a viable option vis-a-vis financial support. I mean, you know, again, it's an acquisition proposal. This project is for sale to government, and also it is the intention for me to be the supervisor of the development of the project. Swaliga, the Tourism and Economic Development Plan at its best. This would be the ending of the final presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. I would like to now look over to my left with any members of parliament have any questions. I don't see any need. I think the presentation was in-depth, except the few hookups we have is what is the investment? And I had written down a point, since there's no other MPs, but I have some questions. Nature Foundation, wanted to ask you, are you in consultation? But in the last line, you mentioned that with their consultation only you can move forward. So basically that point is clear. And the other point I had was, since you're talking about the Simpson Bay Lagoon, what about those big yachts and everything which are anchored there? Will that be any hindrance for their movement, or this will be totally separate of that?
Thank you for the question. It's a very good question because yes, we have a lot of activity within the Simpson Bay Lagoon, the yacht industry taking up much space. The island in itself, boats pass left and right from it, but a good bit of the territorial water, the Dutch rights of the water, gives you ample space to expand, and there is no law that says that you have to cross the lagoon in only Dutch territorial waters or only French. You cross free. So meaning, when you expand the island, when you make it bigger, you most probably are still navigating in Dutch territorial waters on both sides of the island, but it never impeded anybody to move over and navigate in the French water territories. So building the island will not impede on movement of boat traffic in the lagoon. Absolutely. As a matter of fact, if I may add on to that, what you have, government can take it a step further and say, well, since we are now actively getting involved in industrializing the lagoon and making it, how do you say, financially profitable, we need to then regulate it. And one way of regulating it is to have buoys put, because this is not for the Dutch side, this is something the French side already mentioned a couple of months ago in the newspaper, that they want to have buoys to identify where ships can tie. And this automatically then regulates the whole movement within the Simpson Bay Lagoon. So this is something that can also, because of this project, we can say, hey, we need space for this project, so we need to regulate where boats are allowed to tie. Or, yeah, tie, because they moor by the Marines, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Louis Engel. And with this, I think we come to the final three presentations that you made, and I don't see there's any further questions from any members of Parliament. I would like to thank you for your presence here today and providing the necessary information. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of this meeting. I thank you all for your participation, and I hereby close the meeting.